Well, that's an opening for you. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Biology of Musicology. I'm your host, Dr. Todd Samra, and this week we are examining Andrew Lloyd Webber's Requiem. We think of Andrew Lloyd Webber, we think of Phantom of the Opera, we think of Evita, we think of Jesus Christ Superstar, we think, I don't know how to love him, I don't know how to love him. You know, sweet melodies. And this work really kind of defies much of his work that he wrote for Broadway. He wrote this work after his father passed away. And in setting it up, it really, I think, was a way for him to get in touch with his feelings over that loss. So it's an extremely powerful and profound work. And of course, it isn't really performed terribly often. It isn't terribly well known. So part of the reason for this episode is to raise a little bit more awareness to this, what I think is this great choral orchestral work by Andrew Lloyd Webber. So let's start with Andrew Lloyd Webber. He was born in 1948. He was knighted. I believe it was in around 1990 that he was knighted, 1992 actually. So he is Sir Andrew Lloyd Webber. And of course, he is one of the top 10 grossing composers of our age right now. He has made a lot of money off of making all of those Broadway shows. Phantom of the Opera in particular brought in a lot of money. And of course, there was a movie version. The Evita, they made a movie of. Of course, Jesus Christ Superstar, they made a movie of. So Andrew Lloyd Webber is a pretty big name in terms of the Broadway musical world, but not necessarily respected in the same way in classical music. So, really he is every bit as much a legitimate composer as the other legitimate, I hate that word, legitimate composers that came before him. But you look at the tradition of Vaughan Williams and Herbert Howells, William Walton, Benjamin Britten, these great English composers that contributed a lot of literature to the English church. This is essentially church music. Here he is kind of following a little bit in that tradition. His counterpart, I think, really is in some ways John Rutter, who writes pretty much exclusively that kind of choral music. So it's a balance. Now, when we look at this piece of music, it's for orchestra, but a different orchestra than we might normally expect. For example, there are no violins because violins are happy. And so he didn't want to have that happy sound. And where did he get that from? Well, Brahms. Brahms' Requiem, the very first movement, no violins. They just sit there on the stage. It's violas, cellos, basses, and the rest of the orchestra. So I think it's kind of cool that for this particular entire work, there are no violins. There are violas, cellos, and double basses, but none of the high violins. There also is a full complement of saxophones. So classical saxophonists, the Rachmaninoff, the Rhapsody and the Variations of the Theme by Paganini is a work that includes class saxophone, for example. So this is another one. There's also in the score a lot of percussion. There's organ, there's piano, and there's Yamaha DX7. And you're like, what is a Yamaha DX7? It's like, well, it was a pretty popular synthesizer keyboard in the 1980s. And so it's actually in the score to have a DX7 on stage to kind of add a timbre to the work that might be different than traditional classical music. It's really just kind of used for effect. He also scores the work for two treble soloists, I should say a soprano and a treble, a female soprano and a boy soprano, and a tenor. And those are the three soloists. I conducted this work once when I was a professor at St. Joseph's College, and of course one of the great things about doing that is we had two senior girls graduating, both with voice concentrations, and one was more of an early music soprano and the other was more of an operatic soprano. So it worked out kind of nicely to them, and then I brought in a good friend professional to do the tenor, and it was a great way to kind of have a major work with orchestra for those two sopranos in their final semester. But I also did it with a small chamber orchestra, and I made the pianist play both piano and organ, and we kind of created our own little small chamber orchestra version of this piece, primarily for budget reasons. I mean, it was a small college. But really, the power of having this with a full orchestra and a very, very large choir can be quite profound. Of course, in the recording done by Lauren Mizell, the choir is a traditional English church choir, so there are no women. It is boy sopranos and then men altos, countertenors, that comprise the choir along with tenors and basses. So it's a more traditional English kind of arrangement, if you will, orchestration. We're going to start just by this very beginning, and he starts it very humbly. He ends it in a very similar way. And of course, a requiem is a death mass. It is a rest eternal, requiem aeternam. And so it's a way of kind of, it's a last rites. There's a solemnity to this music and to this text. So you can hear it starts just very gently. And the soloist is going to come in here in a minute. Here we go. So that's the treble, the boy soprano. Very tuneful in kind of Phantom of the Opera sort of way, and these very open intervals, very natural harmonic sounding using the harmonic series. It's kind of a beautiful and humble beginning, and of course he ends the work then just kind of very similarly. I don't want to give away the ending, but he ends it in a very kind of similar way. This is the Kyrie. So we hear a lot of the same melodic nature. So it's still quite melodic, and he's building the energy here, and this is, of course, going to lead into that Dies irae la solvet seclum in favilla, which is kind of an intricate, angular type of melody. So he's really showing off in a lot of interesting ways the very many different ways that he can compose a melody. I want to go to the Ingemisco Lacrimosa section of the work, and to bring it in here, we're going to go up about here. Just ignore that little bit. Here we go. Placido Domingo, which gives a definite operatic feel to it. So he's giving this definite hero Italian opera almost quality to this tenor role and writing it in a very operatic sort of way. And of course that's balanced when we get to the Lacrimosa, which is, a lot of people associate that text with the Mozart version. It really means crying or weeping, so he brings everything down, gets the orchestra out of the way, and we have just choir here. And then the next phrase is the same. Gorgeous, I think just really beautiful writing. And there's a lot of interesting things going on in the orchestration, some very deep, rich things in the instrumental writing. So I really encourage you to actually listen to this with headphones or a very, very good high quality audio sound system, so you can really hear a lot of the subtle things and how the orchestra weaves in and out of the texture. I want to move on to the Hosanna. Hosanna, he's famous for writing Hosanna, Hosanna. Hosanna, Hosanna, Zana, Zana, Ho, from Jesus Christ Superstar. So here we have a Hosanna text, and he has to do something very different than Hosanna, Hosanna, and he came up with this. Here we go. Now that's the theme, and it's an 8/8. 8/8. The time signature 8/8 there. But when the choir comes in, they're going to sing it in 7/8, which is actually kind of a really cool rhythmic little twist. In very many ways, a very English thing to do. The English are very crafty with their asymmetrical meters. Here you go. Oh, here's the 8/8 again. Sorry, I went too ahead. So there's the 8/8 section, but let's go back just a little bit here and listen to that 7/8. Awkward. But I love it because this is a really great thing to do in terms of the rehearsal. I happened to do this piece as a freshman in college, as a college student with the Florian Philharmonic actually, and the Philharmonic Chorus, and of course our conductor John Lacey spent a lot of time teaching us this in 7/8, and then we'd flip and do it again in 8/8, and then we go back and do it in 7/8, and then we do it in 8/8. So to make sure that we really understood that because it's just 1/8 note different, it just throws off that rhythm just kind of ever so slightly there. It's really kind of a fun thing to rehearse. So the Hosanna is of course very joyful, very a lot of praise, but very deep and heavy. The Pie Jesu is the most famous from this work. Was actually a video made. I've done this at weddings. I've played it as an instrumental piece. I've sung it as a solo. I've accompanied two sopranos and all kinds of various combinations in this piece. It's a very, very pretty, very much like the style what we get from the musical. Here we go. Sarah Brightman. I do love Sarah Brightman. Poor girl. She gets teased a little bit, but I actually think she had a really good solo album there. I bought it. Had a lot of really good stuff on it. I'm not going to diss Sarah Brightman, but a very typical piece of music for Andrew Lloyd Webber. And of course, this is the penultimate piece. It's the next to the last movement. So it's kind of a nice spot to do something where people can kind of settle into their seats and feel really comfortable and feel like they're actually listening to an Andrew Lloyd Webber piece. And then he concludes with the Lux Aeterna. Which I love this shift. 12/8 here. Here we go. I love that metric shift there. That's the use of sesquialtera. Of course, he's not the first one to use this particular technique. It's been done a number of times. It reminds me of the Onager, the Psalm of Penitence from King David. Starts out that exact same way, and that used to be a conducting example. It was something that conducting students had to pass. They had to be able to conduct this shift in 12/8 to make it work like that. So it kind of uses another open style melody towards the end. It's got a leap of a fifth in it. So he's doing that again, but he's expressing his melodic skill with this, but he's really exercising his grief. He's really exercising the pain inside of him, and there's a lot about this piece that is dissonant. So what I would encourage you to do is listen to it more than once. This is truly one of those works where the more you know it, the more you understand it, the more you hear it, the more you'll like it. It really grows on you. And I remember even as an undergraduate learning some of the sections of it and how you had to like pull your note out of like thin air and There were some really dissonant parts, and I'm looking at this and going, wow, what's going on here, and not really understanding it. And over time, as it settled into me, I really started to kind of click with these motives that he's using, and the harmonies, and then the way that they settle in. So this piece, on first listen, you may be like, I'm not sure that I really like it. But if you stick with it, if you hang with it for a little while, the more you listen to it, the more you understand it, the more you can appreciate it, the more you're really going to like it. I think it's really a great piece of music, and one that deserves really far more attention than I think it gets in today's concert repertoire world. Next week we are going to look at Peter Gabriel's version, his album Up, which I think is a tremendous collection of songs, some really sophisticated, mature, compositional ideas on that album, Peter Gabriel's Up. And then the week after that, we're going to look at the Rachmaninoff Rhapsody on a Theme by Paganini, another piece with saxophones in it. That's not why, but it's just simply a great piece of music, because one of the last, it was actually the last great orchestral piece that he wrote before he passed away. And it contains a lot of gems, and of course it was included in the movie Somewhere in Time, and that made it more popular, but it's just a really gorgeous, gorgeous piece of music. So we're going to take a deep look at Rachmaninoff in 2 weeks. Thank you for joining us today on the Biology of Musicology. This particular episode is going to be a cross-channel episode, so it's not only going to be on the Patreon channel, but it's also going to be on YouTube. So please subscribe. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel. Please subscribe to the Patreon channel. If you like this episode, definitely tune into the Patreon channel, because this is kind of what we do. We alternate back and forth between classical and rock selections. So I wanted to give one of these away just to let people know what this show is all about. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in today. I hope that you all take an opportunity to go explore Andrew Lloyd Webber's Requiem and get to know it, love it, and appreciate it. I think it will be a piece that will grow on people the more they listen to it. Thank you for tuning in to the Biology of Musicology, and we'll see you all next time.